Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Lewes District Council full council meeting. I am Councillor Ross, Chair of the Council. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the published government regulations. For those participating in the meeting or watching on the live stream, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. All councillors have been sent the agenda papers for this meeting. I wish to remind councillors that this meeting is being broadcast live and members should follow the etiquette guide for remote meetings. In particular, please make sure that all mobile phones are turned off and are not used during the meeting. Would any councillor wishing to speak please indicate by raising a hand electronically. If you do not have the electronic hand function or are joining the meeting by phone only and you wish to speak, you will need to say your name so that I can give you an opportunity to come in. Please unmute your microphone when you're called on to speak and turn it back off when finished. If we have connection issues during a vote, the Head of Legal Services will give the councillor a further opportunity to reconnect. If not successful, he will advise as to whether the missing vote will make a difference to the outcome. If it does, we will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to enable a councillor to reconnect. If it does not, we will move on to the next agenda item. Please note that no speech by a member of the council shall exceed 5 minutes, with the exception of the budget proposal speech, for which 20 minutes is allowed in the Constitution. I will now take agenda items 1, 2 and 3 together. Welcome and introductions, apologies for absence and declarations of interest. I have received apologies from Councillor Borman. Can I now ask councillors to introduce themselves one by one and confirm if they have any declarations of interest? Firstly, Councillor Adeniji, and I'm aware that you're joining by phone.
Yes, Councillor Sam Adeniji. I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Adeniji. Councillor Amy.
Councillor Amy, no personal interest in matters on the agenda, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amy. Councillor Banks.
Councillor Banks, no matters of interest to declare on any items on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Bixon.
Councillor Nancy Bixon, I have no declarations of interest to declare.
Thank you, Councillor Bixon. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Matthew Bird, Cabinet Member for Sustainability. I have no declarations of interest to make in respect of items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Brett.
Councillor Christine Brett, I have no declarations of interest to make on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brett. Councillor Berman.
Councillor Roy Berman, I have no declaration of interest in any matter on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Julie Carr, Cabinet Member for Recycling, Waste and Open Spaces, and I have no items to declare an interest in this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Clay.
Councillor Roy Clay, I have no declarations of interest on any items on tonight's agenda.
Councillor Clay. Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Chris Collier, Cabinet Member for People and Performance, and I've got no interest to declare on any items in the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Collier. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Phil Davis, I have no declarations of interest to make it against any agenda item this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. I have no declaration of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Denis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Johnny Denis. I'm Cabinet Member for Customer and Communities, and I have no interest to declare into this evening's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. Councillor Duhigg.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Linda Duhigg, no declarations of interest on the agenda this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duhigg. Councillor Gauntlet.
Councillor Stephen Gauntlet, and I have no declarations of interest on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gauntlet. Councillor Jones.
Councillor Jones, I have no declarations of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Linnington.
Councillor Isabel Willington, leader of the Conservative Opposition Group on the Council. I have no declarations of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linnington. Councillor Jim Lord.
Councillor Jim Lord, I have no declaration of interest on any item on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillor Sylvia Lord.
I Councillor Silver, I have no declaration of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillor Makepeace.
Councillor Imogen Makepeace, and I also have no items of interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Makepeace. Councillor McCleary.
Councillor James McCleary, I'm the leader of the council and I have no interest to declare on this evening's agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Councillor MacLeod.
Councillor MacLeod, no personal prejudicial interest to declare. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Manley.
And Councillor Manley, I have no declarations of interest to make in respect of the items on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Manley. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, Chair. I have no declarations regarding the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maskell. Councillor Meyer.
Good evening. I'm Councillor William Meyer. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing. I have nothing to declare regarding this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Councillor Miller.
Councillor J Miller, no interest.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Zoe Nicholson, I've got no interest to declare on any item on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor O'Brien.
Councillor Emily O'Brien, I'm Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure and I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Councillor Ruth O'Keefe, Cabinet Member for Tourism and Devolution. I have no interest to declare in any items on the council agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Papanikolaou.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Papanikolaou, no interests to declare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Papanikolaou. Councillor Peterson.
Councillor Julian Peterson, I have no interest to declare tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Rigdon.
Good evening, Councillor Kira Rigdon. I've got no declarations of interest this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rigdon. Councillor Robinson.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Christine Robinson, and I have no interest to declare on any items on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Rutland.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Jeff Rutland. I have no items to declare on any items on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Rutland. Councillor Saunders.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors. Councillor Saunders here. No declarations of interest on any items on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Von Kerthy.
Councillor Von Kerthy, no interest to declare on the agenda.
Lovely, thank you. I can also confirm that I have no interest to declare on any of the items on this agenda. So we now move to item 4, the minutes. Councillors, do you wish me to sign the minutes of the last meeting on the 23rd of November 2020 as a correct record? I will take it that all are in agreement unless someone speaks now to disagree. I don't see any hands or hear anyone. Therefore, the minutes have been approved. Agenda item 5, announcements. A list of my engagements as chair of the council since the last meeting of the council was issued earlier today as a supplement to the agenda. And I understand there are no other announcements that the chief executive or leader wishes to make. Confirm. Agenda item 6, urgent items. There are no items to be considered as a matter of urgency. Agenda item 7, questions from members of the public. No questions have been received from members of the public. And item 8, petitions. No petitions have been received. Agenda item 9, urgent decisions. 3 decisions have been taken by Cabinet or Cabinet members since the last meeting and are included at pages 15 to 22 for information. Okay, we move to agenda item 10, recommendations from council. First, item 10A, council budget and setting of the council tax. I understand that Councillor Nicholson is moving the budget recommendations set out on pages 23 to 31 of the agenda, which incorporate recommendations from Cabinet on the 4th of February in respect of General Fund Revenue Budget 2020-21 and Capital Programme, Housing Revenue Allocation, Revenue Budget and Rent Setting 2021 and HRA Capital Programme 2019 to 23, Treasury Management and Prudential Indicators 2021, Capital Strategy and Investment Strategy. I understand that Councillor McCleary is seconding the recommendations. I invite Councillor Nicholson, Portfolio Holder for Finance and Assets, to speak to the budget proposals. The Constitution allows for up to 20 minutes for your budget speech, Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Zoe Nicholson, thank you very much, Chair. I should have said earlier I'm Deputy Leader, but also Finance Portfolio Holder on the Cabinet, and thanks very much. I don't intend to take 20 minutes, but it might be 10. So hopefully members of the public that are watching, welcome. Welcome to all councillors here and to our staff that are watching. I guess one of the things that I wanted to start with is that in presenting budgets, it's traditional for some leaders to perhaps, shall we say, sugarcoat the truth, or to present like the Chancellor does. And, you know, sometimes people have said that I do this too, present like a doom and gloom story and then contrast the doom and gloom with a facade of competence. And present the decisions that we're making as if there is absolutely no alternative. Well, that's not happening here today. As one of the leaders in our community, like each one of you in this virtual room today, I know that we're facing absolutely unprecedented challenge in the UK and in our district. We're facing economic and ecological and environmental collapse, like of which none of us have ever seen before. And the last year has been like none other. The colossal challenge of COVID-19 has deeply affected so many of us. And yet that challenge has been met and will continue to be met by an equally awesome response by the people of our district. And it's because of these challenges that we need to face the coming year and the years to come with our eyes absolutely wide open, with creativity, with competence, and most of all by working together. So yes, this budget is based on competence. That our teams and the administration have shown time and time again, but this budget is also about choices. And we're told so often that there's an inevitability when we meet these crises head on of cutting services, of reducing public spend through pay freezes. We're told there's an inevitability that we need to hurt those that are most vulnerable, which is what the kind of Chancellor, the government, and perhaps some people, I suspect few numbers of people in this room will have you believe. But these decisions are not inevitable. They are political choices, choices that often make the local community pay for the crisis. So our administration is committed to making choices. We're committed to making choices that affect and impact the lives of our neighbours, our friends, the places that we live in, the environment, the beautiful place that we live in. But let's make sure that we make the right choices today. So I'm going to talk you through 4 key choices this administration is making when setting a balanced budget before you today. But first of all, I want to offer, I hope and I'm sure on behalf of everybody here, our heartfelt sympathies for all the families in our district who have been so painfully affected by the loss of loved ones due to this virus. Many of us will know of or have been directly affected or experienced the loss of loved ones, and every single person is a tragedy. And I also want to pay tribute to the people, everyone in our district who has put in such an incredible response to this emergency. I've been humbled by the work of our neighbours, volunteers, council staff, the voluntary and community sector, the NHS and all public sector workers. So thank you very much. So you'll see in the report that our Chief Financial Officer's report sets out just how damaging the pandemic has been on our council finances, which were already massively stretched due to 10 years of reduced government support. on top of 10 years of austerity policies which have largely hollowed out large sectors of public sector services. And the pandemic has definitely hit both our council's income and has experienced increased demands for services, and has led to more hardship across the district, requiring what is now probably a rapid expansion of jobs and support for the economy. And it's shown us quite how deeply fragile our council services are, as well as how fragile our economy is. And as we approach the end of this financial year, we have achieved a balanced budget for this current year, but not without an additional 3.6 million of spend, of which we only received 2.2 million of government support. The remaining 1.4 million we have had to find by either use of reserves or by savings in our budget. And we achieve this by the sheer competence and commitment of our staff, of our managers, of the directors, of our chief executive, who, whilst delivering services to our residents in the most extraordinary times, have achieved a balanced budget, which means that we can continue to play a really vital part in the recovery and reimagining of our district. And it's because of this competence that we now have more choices than we might have had. And I know that our collective thanks goes to those staff and officers. So I'm presenting to you today, this evening, a budget for investment, recovery and reimagining what we can do together. And we choose not to scale back our ambition to address the climate crisis, to address the economic crisis that so many families and businesses face. Now would not be the time to scale back our ambition. This is our first choice. We have chosen to create a budget in which we put more of our resources where they are needed most and in line with our key priorities. It's also a budget that we choose to support our residents, our environment and our economy. And it's a budget that we provide targeted investments to support those who need it most. Yes, this budget is based on increasing council tax by less than 10p a week. That 10p helps us to achieve a balanced budget and allows us to target our support to those who really need it. This, our first choice, helps us to make our second choice, and our second choice is for us to provide those who need it with council tax support equal to 100% council tax discount. That means that hundreds of hard-working, low-income families in our district will, for the first time since 2013, pay no council tax at all. And I'm sure that many of you in this room have met people who need this level of support. People who've been made redundant, people who've been part of the 10 million people in the UK who are in insecure work. I know that I have. And we also know from our work with Citizens Advice, who do amazing work in our district, that debt is a massive contributory factor to poor mental health and well-being. And we also know that COVID hasn't affected our communities equally. We might have all been in the same storm, but we've certainly not been on all the same boat. And in fact, I would argue that some of us haven't even been in a boat in the first place. So we make this choice to increase council tax by 10 pence a week to those who can afford it, at the same time as offering the maximum discount to those who can't. And that's a clear political choice to make sure that we reflect the community spirit of COVID-19 and what it's shown us about how we can best look after each other as best we can. That's our second choice. Our third choice is choosing to have a budget which is about growth in our borrowing and in our investments through our capital programme. So some will say it's a time that we should batten down the hatches and retrench, we should cut public services and we should manage risk really tightly. Well, as an administration, we know that if we do that, we risk losing more jobs, risk a decline in the quality of our services that people have come to enjoy, and that we will risk not being able to contribute to a thriving economy. So this is our third choice. And in making this choice, we're choosing to invest in our community and to use our financial power over the next 2 years to double our spend from 22 million to 50 million in 21-22 alone, and then another additional 45 million over the next 2 years. And we know that by committing to use as much of this resource as we can within the district and in wider East Sussex, with companies and businesses in East Sussex, we will create local prosperity. And further, we commit to doing everything that we can to make sure that we spend this resource in a way that supports those who are furthest away from the job queue. And we've already been doing a lot of work across Cabinet on working in partnership with all our other public sector partners through the Recovery Summit and across East Sussex to use our influence to make sure that we retain as much public sector spend as we can within our community. So just a few things to outline that are part of this third choice. Critically, we commit 38 million over the next 3 years to build more council homes across the district, an additional 200. We've already built or bought in excess of 45 in the last 18 months. We commit to spending 6 million to regenerate Newhaven Town Centre and an additional £500,000 on the Newhaven Railway Quay. We commit to spending 1.7 million to maintain and improve our leisure facilities, as well as other investment in waste and recycling service, as well as funding to maintain some of our key buildings and repair some of our flint walls, and a programme over the next 2 years to improve our public conveniences. And our final choice, but not our least choice, these weren't in any particular order, is a choice we make to invest in addressing the climate crisis, and in doing so creating much needed jobs and income in green and renewable sectors, because we know that the solution to the economic collapse that we face can be found in greening our economy and putting well-being first, and by doing what it takes to address the climate crisis and building resilience within our community. So this budget makes some very bold investments in greener, warmer and cheaper heating for homes and in renewable energies. We've been working with fellow local authorities across East Sussex and Brighton and Hove to retrofit our housing stock, creating jobs and a workforce for the future. We will be spending an additional 14 million to keep our council homes maintained to a good standard and retrofit them to make them cheaper and warmer. We'll be spending 1.8 million to bring the UTC in Newhaven back into use, providing much needed education, training in cleaner, green and marine technologies. And for the first time, we'll be making a 10 million facility available to develop and invest in local green energy and sustainability initiatives and those with strong business cases. We'll be investing just under £1 million over the next 3 years to support coastal and flood defence initiatives, and 1.5 million over the next 3 years on our green spaces and parks, both playgrounds, but also in rewilding and improving the beauty and diversity of this amazing place that we live in. So, Chair, just to conclude, we make all these choices in the face of government choices that frankly have failed to support or even understand local government, in particular district and borough councils like ourselves. And we must remember that the Minister, Robert Jenrick, said do what it takes to respond to this crisis, and then backtracked so fast that his statement is now a distant memory. And we also make these choices in the face of our Chancellor's settlement that lacks long-term vision and fairness. We're faced with still 1 year spending reviews, uncertainty over funding if we're ever in future lockdowns. We face massive reduction in business rate retention schemes, gaps between the rhetoric of bring all the homeless in, which is the right thing to do, and then the funding needed to pay for it. And we make these choices because they are the right thing to do, to use our creativity and commitment to support the most vulnerable, and to use the inspiration of the community spirit of the COVID-19 response as our example to guide us in our decision making. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat the future for you because the level of uncertainty that we faced is significant. The choice to end furlough, and I understand that the numbers of people furloughed in our district is somewhere between 25 and 35%, will have a huge impact on our community and on the level of need of support in our community. So these are choices that we make with the scale of these challenges in mind, and I know that we will be better prepared to weather the economic and environmental storms by making them. So, councillors, on all sides, in all parts of this district council, I commend this budget to you, and I invite you to join with me in making the right choices today to protect our community, make the best use of the resources that we have to stimulate the economy and protect the most vulnerable, and say yes to all the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. I understand that no amendments were received by the deadline, so I'll now open up the matter for debate. Any councillors wishing to speak, please indicate now. Councillor Miller.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Chair. And thanks to all officers who have put obviously a huge amount of time and effort into producing this year's budget, and it's a very difficult task, and so we thank them for that. You'll be aware, as the leader of the council and the deputy leader were, that the Policy and Performance Advisory Committee, of which I chair, recommended not increasing council tax this year by £5, and it was ignored by this coalition of tax increases, meaning that it hits the hardest families in our district most, and they're just about managing, not the people that receive benefits to assist them in paying that or reducing their obligations, or the people that can really afford it, but the people, Tom in the local shop who's on £9 or £10 an hour, who wouldn't otherwise be eligible, who's trying to bring up 2 children as a single dad. It's those people that these tax increases are going to hit most. And the deputy leader of the council cast it aside as £5 a year, but actually we tax our residents £200. That's £20 a month. That's a significant family household bill that is coming out of our residents' pockets. And so, whilst millions have been received from the government to support Lewes District Council through this crisis in the form of grants and 75% income loss protection, as well as obviously huge government support for residents across the district, with both whether they're unemployed and on universal credit, where there's been further support, or whether they're self-employed, and of course to businesses as well, with huge unprecedented levels of government grants and loans available in the form of CBILS or bounce back loans. No one, I don't think, in the country is arguing that the government isn't spending enough. Anyone can have a look at the debt forecast figures as a result of this crisis. Crisis not caused by anyone in this country's doing, not caused by anyone's doing. And so I think it's important to remember that the government, no one is arguing that the government should be spending more and more. And one would have thought, wouldn't they, that during that crisis, it would be rational for any council to have to, in the following years following that crisis, be using its reserve year on year. And that's why they were built up in such a way for these 1 in 100 years events. Instead, this budget, we appear to be filling our reserves when we're increasing council tax on poor old Tom, the single dad of 2 who works in the co-op. And so when the leader of the council, Councillor James McCleary, argued for a 0% budget increase and use of reserves at Newhaven Town Council, he agrees with us, or we agree with him, that that was the right decision to take. And so it's questionable, isn't it, that he does decide to do something entirely different when it's not in his Newhaven area, but it affects the entire district as a whole, and it's priorities really, isn't it? Because This coalition's priorities is filling up their reserves, which we said would be, when it came to PPAC, as a result of business rate retention, you know, partly business rate retention being under ambitious, and it is now higher. Yours is to fill up the reserves. Ours is to keep money in our residents' pockets when they need the most, in the forgotten middles pockets. This isn't a tax and spend budget, as you would expect from a coalition of the left, but this is a tax and stash budget, isn't it? You're making, Councillor Nicholson, as you said, it will be the poorest that pay for this crisis. Well, you're doing exactly the same, aren't you? You're making the people of the district, the poorest people of the district that don't quite qualify for benefits, pay for this crisis. And whilst you're stashing money into reserves, it's not always about how much money you have to spend, is it? It's also about how it's spent and getting the most for every pound. And that's why, in our view, the council tax could have remained at zero. We could have remained to support the poorest in the districts. We could have remained fiscally and prudential, and we could have met the services demand requirements that we needed over the coming year. And that's why, in our view, this budget isn't acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Next, I have Councillor Berman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm a bit slow finding the button. I would like to join with the last speaker, Councillor Miller, and firstly thank the officers who have worked very hard to produce this budget and to present it for us so clearly. I'm put in a very difficult position, as all of the elements of the budget are to be taken as one item. I do want to see well-directed investment in green solutions and local economic solutions, and to offer good value and future-proofing services and maintenance and employment. However, as Councillor Miller just stated, I find it very difficult to accept that those who are struggling through, who don't qualify for benefit but do not have surplus in their pocket, are having to pay extra this year, which was avoidable, and they're having to pay it to put more money into reserve and to subsidise those who are already enjoying benefit anyway. Not 100%, but 80%, which was agreed. And it seems to be a very unfair way of going about it. And I also have a query about whether it really is the business of our local authority to be involved in redistribution of wealth between those who have more to those who have less, if that's the business of our local authority, when it is not on the agenda of our national government. So, unfortunately, because of this item, I must vote against the budget as a whole, even though I believe it contains many elements which I would love to be able to support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Next, I have Councillor MacLeod, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to be honest, I'm sitting here kind of a bit taken back. This is from an opposition party whose government won't even commit to committing to £20 universal credit top-up. This also from a party whose council colleagues on the county have put council tax up 3.49%. This also from a party whose PPC has put, and the Police and Crime Commission has put up the council tax 7.5%. And this also from a party who's in control of the Fire Service Commission, who has put up the council tax 1.9%. So I'm just sat here gobsmacked at the sheer hypocrisy. I'm guessing after tonight's meeting, they're going to be condemning the county council, they're going to be condemning Katie Bourne, and they're going to be condemning the police and the fire service. The fact is that everyone has to put up these fees is because the Conservative government continues to fail services. No other reason. It's purely on the Conservative government's door that councils and services have to do this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. I also, like everybody else, would like to thank the officers for their report. Very well laid out and very easy to read. I was interested to hear of the of some good, grand and innovative suggestions for investment in the community, particularly into house building over the next few years. I would just like to see a more financially astute approach to future housing development. Mistakes have been made by this administration and the former one, and I will be scrutinising personally as part of the PPAC committee any future opportunities to ensure that similar mistakes are not made going forward. Housing for the sake of it over unnecessary overspending on individual schemes must be properly assessed before they go ahead. I was interested to hear about particularly one that Councillor Nicholson raised, which was a £500,000 investment that this council is making at Railway Quay. I wonder if at the end of this you could come back and just confirm which that is. Is that the new cycle hub? I was also concerned about the special expenses that are still being charged to Newhaven. A lot of this being due to the fact that we still are awaiting devolution of assets to our town council, which is rather frustrating. This has been going on many years, and I would like to see that progress to reduce the special expense charge on Newhaven. But if Councillor Nicholson could come back on that point, obviously after the other speakers have spoken, and I'm at the moment reserving judgment on my support of this until I've heard all the speakers on the debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Obviously, Councillor Nicholson, some specific questions there, which you can maybe pick up in your response at the end, or possibly take offline with Councillor Saunders. Next, I have Councillor Denis, please.
Sorry, it took me a moment there. Councillor Johnny Denis. I really welcome this this budget proposal. It's got a lot in it. The thing I want to point out and highlight is it's so much about trying to protect our residents from the cliff edge that's facing us and facing our community in terms of jobs, in terms of financial security, by reinvesting in our community. And it's about creating local jobs. It's about creating local educational routes into jobs. It's about really reframing what our local economy can do, and it's taking our the leadership of the council to do that. It's something that we're in a position to do, that we can shape, we can really progress, and we can offer opportunity that provides jobs in future-proof jobs, if you like, in the environment sector and sustainability sectors. It's really a positive move. It's something which is going to give a lasting benefit, and it's not just about a quick win by saying we're not going to put up council tax. We're actually investing in our communities. And when we propose to put money into reserves, that's for particular projects. That's in earmarked reserves, while also drawing on our reserves to make sure we don't go into deficit. It's completely misunderstood. Some of the other speakers have completely misunderstood how this budget is laid out. So I think it's a really progressive and positive investment in our communities, and I will be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. Next, I have Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take long, just a couple of moments. A couple of things for clarification, maybe with some of my Conservative colleagues. You can't support the poorest people in society and then reject a budget that brings about a 100% council tax reduction scheme. By definition, they are the poorest people in society. I'd also like to take issues. It may have been a slip of the tongue from Councillor Berman, but I suspect there are very few people that are enjoying benefit. Certainly the people I meet in East Peacehaven are not enjoying benefit. Many of the people I meet in West Peacehaven or North Peacehaven, which all have areas that are lower decile of multi-deprivation. These are the people that are going through the worst moments of their lives, and we should be there to support them. And that's what this budget does. So I really take issue with the fact that it's suggesting we're not supporting the most vulnerable in society, because those are the most vulnerable in society. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Collier. Councillor Gauntlet, please. Councillor Gauntlet, I think you're still muted.
Chair. I'm very sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. I echo what Councillor Collier has just said, but I'd actually like to ask for clarification about something Councillor Miller said. Unless my hearing is really playing me up, I think he said that the increase was £20 a month. According to my sums, it works out at £5.20 for a whole year. Now, I may be totally wrong, but that's what I thought I heard. So if I could just put that in the pot, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gauntlet. Councillor Miller, would you like to answer that question?
I think Councillor Gauntlet misheard. I said to Councillor Gauntlet that the council tax bill for a Band D property will be approaching £197 nearly £200, which is close to £20 a month family bill. So the total monthly payment from a family-sized house in a Band D property will be close to £20 a month in total for Lewes District Council tax, not an increase of £20.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Gauntlet, does that answer the question?
It answers the question, but I'd rather it had been put in a straight way at the very beginning. Thank you, though.
Thank you, councillors. Next, I have Councillor O'Connor, please. Sorry, is that Councillor Adeniji? Are you trying to speak?
Yes, please, Chair.
Can I get you in after Councillor O'Connor, please, Councillor Adeniji? Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor O'Connor here. I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Miller said. I think the question of hypocrisy here does come into it, and I think it's absolutely essential, as others have already said, that we recognise the fact that a lot of work has been put in here by councillors and lead members within the Cabinet to ensure that we achieve this 100% coverage on council tax, and that must be applauded. That's not hypocrisy, that is meeting the need where it is greatest within our community, and it's essential that we do that. And to say about, £5.20, okay, it's not insignificant, but it's over a year, and it does help us to ensure that we invest in the things that are absolutely necessary for our community, which is building it for the future. And I find it hypocritical, really, for our Conservative colleagues on this council to continue to go on about austerity and cutting back and this sort of thing, which is the inference behind what has been said. So I welcome this and I will be voting for it, Chair, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Adeniji, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an absurd council tax increase. It is wrong that during a pandemic, at the time, millions of people are worried about their jobs and their future, and they're worried about how they will make ends meet. Tax and Spend Rainbow Coalition should think it's the best thing they can do is increase council tax. From what I can read, this is the longest shopping list I've seen in my time as a councillor. This isn't about investing in our towns. This is about trying to find an opportunity to spend. And I think we've missed out an opportunity for us as a council to work with the private sector, to work with the third sector, to bring about investment in our town, in our district. And we can have this much needed investment by working with external organizations and external partners. And I think that has been missed. Now, I cannot comment on what each of the county council is doing. I cannot comment on what the police commissioner is doing. I can only comment on what I do as a councillor. And I can only comment on what we do as a Lewes District Council. And I think as a council, this is a wasted opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to show as a council that we understand the pain our residents are going through, and we can tighten our belt and reduce our council tax demand. It's not too late, I hope, to change your mind. I therefore will urge you not to increase this council tax and help ease the pressure on family budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adeniji. Next, I have Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Well, I really welcome this budget. Like Councillor Adeniji, I've been around quite a long time. And the thing about council tax is if you have the possibility of having it reduced to zero for the poorest people, then the increase for them is zero. In fact, the increase for them is negative because they would have been being charged 10 or 20% previously. And if they were unlucky enough to be self-employed and earning very little, they would have been charged 100%, which I think you'll all agree is a lot more than a few pence more. That's pounds and pounds more a week. So for me, I feel that this is the culmination of a great deal of work, which I hope I've had some influence and help on, to arrive at a point where we are helping the poorest the most. If you are increasing council tax, but somebody is not paying any of it in order that other people who have got more money can support them, I think that is the most equitable way of arranging things. There's no point in arguing about whether or not somebody is going to be spending 20p or 40p or however many pence it is a week more. The point is that we are not charging that to the poorest people. So that really is helping them. It's extremely practical. And I would commend this budget to everybody who is listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor McCleary, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor James McCleary. So I'm taking a much more upbeat note than many people have tonight. Obviously, this is a really challenging time. I congratulate Councillor Nicholson on this budget and indeed all the officers who've worked so hard on it. It's a real credit to all of them. There's so much to be pleased about in here. I think a few points of clarification are probably important at this point. I think it's really important that we're very clear what we're talking about with our council tax increase. It's £5 a year for a average bandee taxpayer. And as Councillor Collier, I think, illustrated extremely clearly, what we are doing is ensuring that we are putting the emphasis in terms of where we are supporting people with those who need it most. It is really sad to see that we're the same old record being played by the Conservatives of this race to the bottom, just cut, keep reducing council services, keep reducing what we can do for the community, as long as you're saving a few pence for people in multi-million-pound houses. That's the most important thing. Councillor Adeniji, I was quite surprised to hear you say you couldn't comment on county council issues. That's surprising, as I've seen you comment quite extensively on Facebook, and indeed there was a leaflet put through Dawes and Seaford the other day saying you're standing for the county council, so that might be a bit tricky for you in the next few months, but obviously that's your choice to make. And the Conservative councillors here might want to think about coordinating some of their messages before meetings, because one cannot be a tax and spend council, as Councillor Adeniji said, and also a tax and I think it was stash council, as Councillor Miller said. Clearly those are completely contradictory and suggest possibly complete nonsense, but that's perhaps not my place to say. Overall, though, we have loads to be positive about here. I'm so excited about the investment in open spaces, in our leisure services. These are things that for me personally are a big priority. I mean, one of the reasons that I stand for election is to try and make the world a better place for my 2 young children, and things like play facilities and support for people in their early years is hugely important. So anything we can do as a council to support that, I think, is something that should be lauded and congratulated. We're in a really difficult time at the moment. We all know this. Every week, myself and Councillor Nicholson do a Facebook Live where we talk to people in the district, thousands of people in the district, and we give them the opportunity to ask us questions and tell us what they think. And we hear about people really struggling at the moment. It is a really difficult time for everyone in this country. So this is a budget that supports people, that targets those who have least and provides them with the most support. Councillor MacLeod's point about the shocking refusal to make the increase in universal credit permanent is a really good illustration of what we're up against. Every time we take a step forward as a council, the government's there to drag us back a few more steps. And that is something that is quite dispiriting for everyone in local government, not just this council, but councils across the country who are struggling because the government has let them down. So my congratulations to everybody. I commend this budget. I think that there's so much support in there, and I think we shouldn't get distracted by adding a few pence to council tax when what we're actually doing here is investing in our community and investing in our children's future. I commend this budget to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Linnington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Isabel Millington. Yes, that's interesting speech from Councillor McCleary. I take the point about a broken record. We could say the same, that it is a broken record, that the Alliance always seek to blame everything on the Conservative government. So yes, we're getting a bit fed up with the broken record too. Coming back to the points that are relevant to the District Council, which is after all what we're supposed to be talking about. I think that you slightly missed the point, and it's the point I will make again, that it seems rather odd to make everybody pay more money and then give people back the, or give them a reduction that they end up not paying some of it. And the point we're trying to make is that wouldn't it be better just to not make everybody pay it at all? Because the people who are going to lose out are those who are just above the threshold for getting any council tax relief. And they are the ones who will be hardest hit, because the council tax is the biggest part of their probably their budget that they have to pay compared to their income. So it's all very well to say that some people will have 100% relief, but it's the ones who just don't quite qualify for any relief who are going to be struggling the most. And so the point of not increasing the council tax was to help those who do need it most, and that's the ones who don't qualify for any of the benefits or the reduction in council tax. So I think you've partly missed the point there. And the other point is that when the original draft budget was set, the amount for the business rates was actually underestimated. And we were told how much it would cost to, if you didn't increase council tax, and I believe it was about £180,000 would be the ultimate effect on the council budget. And yet we see on page 25 of the report that actually the amount that we're getting from business rates is now up to 384,000. So that increase actually completely covers what you would have lost by having a zero increase in council tax, and you would have had some left over. So that could have gone into the reserves if that's what you want to do with it. But instead, all of that is going into reserves. So wouldn't it have been fairer on all the residents in the district to have a zero increase in council tax, and you've used that extra business rates money to cover the loss, if you like, of the increased council tax, and you would have still had money left over if you wanted to put it in the reserves. So that's my point on that. And about the increase in county council and was it the police and crime commissioner amount of the council tax? I think the increase in the police and crime commissioner one was specifically to have higher numbers of police officers. It was specifically to recruit more officers, which is what residents were asking for. So yes, there had to be an increase, but specifically to meet the request of residents who wanted more police officers. And for the county council, as we know, there's a huge amount of extra social care that they need to cover now as a result of the COVID pandemic. So the increase for that will go into the extra social care that is needed. So, I think you say we're hypocritical, but I think actually there are good reasons for some of these things, and it's not being hypocritical to say that we want to help all our residents. And by doing that, you will help those who will not qualify for any of these reductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lidington. Councillor Miller, I see your hand. You've already spoken, so unless you have a point of order or a personal explanation, then I'm afraid you don't have an opportunity to speak again.
It was a point of clarification in relation to Councillor McCleary's question to me.
I don't think we can have a point of clarification. I'm sorry, Councillor Miller. Point of order or personal explanation. I think otherwise, so there's no further opportunity to speak.
Well, in which case, point of order, Councillor McCleary stated that that we had said that it was a tax and spend and a tax and stash budget. It is both, because for his clarity, it's tax and spend in relation to your capital programme, Councillor McCleary, as you should know, and your HRA programme, but a tax and stash one in relation to your revenue budget, general fund, which I assume as the leader of council, you do understand the difference between the budgets. It's concerning that you don't.
Councillor Miller, thank you. I don't think that's a point of order. I think you've made your point, though. Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say thank you to the officers and the Cabinet for a very, very forward-thinking budget, and I was delighted to hear, and I hope my Conservative colleagues we will agree with the building of council houses. Now, council houses they actually support the lowest and the poorest people that need homes. We desperately need homes down here, and all the time we have houses built, it's not for people that need them. So I absolutely welcome this, and I say thank you very much for making sure this is in the budget. I commend the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. It seems as though we're coming to the end of the debate. I have no more hands at the moment. If no one else wishes to speak, then I invite Councillor Nicholson, if you could please sum up before we move to a vote on the budget recommendations as a whole. And just a reminder, in this case, you only have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chair. Councillor Zoe Nicholson. Oh, it's so tempting to get lost in the detail of the debate, isn't it? And to want to respond to all the different, is it £5? Is it £20 a month? Is it, what is it? Let's not go there. The simple principle here that I put to council is that I think our Conservative colleagues misunderstand what fundamentally is happening in our community. And what's fundamentally happening is that people who in the past did not require any support with their council tax now do. And that pool has grown by some 25% in the last 12 months. In that way, those people need, and more of them, need more of our support. And this budget is designed to provide those people with that support. And I entirely agree with the councillor who made the point that you can't say that you care about the poorest or those on lowest incomes and then not support this budget, frankly, because this is the first time that we right a wrong that was created by your fellow colleagues in 2013, where regardless of how low your income was, everybody had to make some payment towards council tax. So that wrong is now being put right, hopefully being put right as of today. The second thing I'd like to challenge is this idea that this is, or I'd actually like to challenge the idea that it's a bad thing to have that some of us who can afford 9.6 pence a week contribute, and some of us who can't don't. And for me, that's a clear political and ethical decision that clearly some other people simply don't agree with. The second thing that I'd like to challenge is the idea that by raising council tax, we're therefore spending through our capital programme, and that's a bad thing. Well, clearly that's not a bad thing. That's how we create wealth. That's how we create prosperity in our district. And the third thing is about our reserves. So our reserves have already, in this financial year, we've had to dip into reserves of £500,000, and it's a bit like. It's a bit like one's savings account. If you have 500 quid in your savings account and you spend it, it simply doesn't exist again. It's not replenished. And to a certain extent, this has had to be replenished. However, that's not what we're doing with this budget. What we're doing is that we're putting in place a accelerator fund to support our local economy by putting aside a small amount of money to get our capital programme going, which will then support local jobs and local wealth in our community. And we're also setting aside some money to deal with business rate retention. I just want to remind our Conservative colleagues that, and in fact all of council, that what we have faced on business rates and what we're about to face on business rates is very, very uncertain. And our Chief Finance Officer's report is really clear about the level of uncertainty in that area. And therefore, we're putting a small amount away to deal with business rate retention. Already, in this financial for next financial year. We're 1.1 million, or might be 1.2 million down on what we expect to receive on business rates already. So I, at the risk of getting lost in the detail and being distracted by the 10 pence or not, this is a budget which fundamentally supports our community to recover, to reimagine what we might do together as a community, to look after the environment in which we live, and to support each other to thrive. So I hope that all council members will vote for all recommendations within this budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. It is required by legislation that all votes on the budget are recorded votes. I'll therefore now put the recommendations to a formal vote. Oliver Dixon, Head of Legal Services, will read all councillors' names alphabetically. Please could you say whether you're for, against or abstain? Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. So just to reiterate, this is a vote on all 10 recommendations taken together. These are the 10 recommendations starting on page 24 through to page 31 of the agenda pack. So I begin with Councillor Adeniji. Councillor Adeniji. I know he was participating by phone. I don't know whether his
muted.
Oh, hang on.
No, sorry.
Yes, Councillor Adeniji, can I take your vote, please?
Against.
Against. Councillor Amy.
Councillor Graham Amy, for.
Councillor Banks.
For.
Councillor Bixon.
Against.
Councillor Bird.
Councillor Matthew Bird, for.
Councillor Brett.
Councillor Christine Brett, for.
Councillor Berman.
Councillor Roy Berman, against.
Councillor Carr.
Councillor Julie Carr, for.
Councillor Clay.
Councillor Roy Clay, for.
Councillor Collier.
Councillor Chris Collier, for.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Davey.
Councillor Davey, against.
Councillor Denis.
Councillor Denis, for.
Councillor Duhigg.
Councillor Linda Duhigg, against.
Councillor Gauntlet.
Councillor Gauntlet, for.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones. Okay, I'm not getting a...
I'm with you. Councillor Jones, against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Linnington.
Councillor Linnington, against.
Councillor Jim Lord.
Councillor Jim Lord, against.
Councillor Sylvia Lord.
Councillor Sylvia Lord, against.
Councillor McCleary.
Councillor James McCleary, for.
Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Councillor Makepeace.
Councillor Imogen Makepeace, I'm for.
Councillor Manley.
Councillor Manley, for.
Councillor Maskell.
Sorry about that. Councillor Ron Maskell, against.
Councillor Meyer.
Councillor William Meyer, for.
Councillor Miller.
Councillor Miller, against.
Councillor Nicholson.
Councillor Zoe Nicholson, for.
Councillor O'Brien.
Councillor Emily O'Brien, 4.
Councillor O'Connor.
Councillor Lawrence O'Connor, 4.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Councillor Ruth O'Keefe, 4.
Councillor Papanikolaou.
Councillor Papanikolaou against.
Councillor Peterson.
Councillor Peterson against.
Councillor Rigdon.
Councillor Rigdon against.
Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Robinson, 4.
Councillor Ross.
Councillor Ross, 4.
Councillor Rutland.
Councillor Rutland against.
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders, unfortunately, as Councillor Nicholson was unable to answer my queries, I'll abstain. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor von Kerthy.
Councillor von Kerthy, 4.
So I'll just count up the votes for, against and abstain. Yep. Oh, yeah. Chair, the outcome of that vote was 21 votes for the recommendations, 16 against, 1 abstention. So the recommendations are carried.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Thank you, everyone. So confirm that the recommendations, the budget recommendations, have been agreed. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 11, recommendations from committees and other council bodies. First, item 11A, the approval of licensing fees. Councillor MacLeod will move the recommendations on page 51 of the agenda and issued in the agenda supplement issued on the 19th of February. And I understand Councillor Robinson will second the recommendations. Councillor MacLeod, can you speak to the recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I suppose the key points are to mention that predominantly most of the fees we are reducing or freezing. The significant reductions will be to the driver licences, both Hackney and private hires, which will be a reduction of 33%, and the same for vehicle licences as well. That will be a reduction of 33%. I'm expecting probably a question after the one increase, which is market operators, which will be going up 10%. This is partly because basically they want to bring the fees more in line with the individual sole traders, who they feel are currently being disadvantaged by the fees at the moment. And also the council costs have increased recently with regards to supporting the market. So that's why the recommendation has been put in place to put that up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Yes, I see some hands. So first is Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor MacLeod has sort of half answered the question I was going to raise, and he might be able to put some more meat on the bone, as it were. I was concerned to see the one increase being the market traders, which is disappointing for particularly our town in Newhaven, where we've only got a few down there and they do struggle, and it is disappointing to see that that go up. But I'll wait for the others to speak, but I was pleased that the majority of the licences are coming down, and I did want some more detail on that. Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. If you could give us some detail on maybe the number in the different towns that are affected, that would be useful. It's just a lump sum, and that's why I was going to ask the question, see how that figure was arrived at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor MacLeod, if you could respond to that and in any other questions.
Yeah, sure. It's not actually just...
Could you, Councillor MacLeod, could you respond at the end of the debate when we've had any other questions, cool. If that's okay, please. So next I have Councillor Makepeace.
Hello, Councillor Makepeace here. Just as a one-time cab driver, I really want to say that I'm very much welcome seeing this reduction for our cabbies. I think they will be pleased with it too. They've had a pretty tough time and it's going on to be tough. So it's a welcome reduction of a significant amount. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Makepeace. Councillor Denis.
Councillor Johnny Denis. I really welcome this this proposal. The proposed fees is just, you know, can you just imagine anywhere else you're going to see increases of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 going over pages and pages and pages, and then you spot the decrease.
Councillor Denis, I think you may have just muted yourself.
No, somebody muted me. It's just told me somebody muted me. So
what did you say?
Yeah, I probably deserved it. So, Councillor Johnny Denis, I really, you know, it's amazing to see this. We've got beyond the zeros, it's the reductions that you should see. So it's 30%. We got in some places a reduction in fees of 30%. This is astonishing stuff. So for the team to be able to come up with this and work it through is really great, and I think it should be really welcomed. It'll be welcomed by all the people operating in these areas of work, all the different licensing and the environmental health fees too. It's really an astonishing thing. So I'd really welcome it. It'll be a real fillip for people working in licensed trades, and I think it'll be, you know, a really welcome move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. Councillor Berman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I must say that you've taken on board here the points we were trying to make earlier in the full budget, and that is that you don't want to make life more difficult for those who are struggling. And I'm afraid taxi drivers and hire car drivers have had a very tough time and continue to have a growingly tough time. And you've helped them, even though they are not at the bottom of the pile. And that's the type of principle that we were trying to achieve when we're talking about the general budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Before I go back to Councillor MacLeod to respond to Councillor Saunders' questions, are there any other comments that councillors wish to make? I don't see any. So, Councillor MacLeod, could you respond to the questions of Councillor Saunders, please?
Yeah. The individual traders won't fees are actually being reduced. It's the operators that are being increased. Steve, I can go back, Councillor Saunders, sorry, I can go back and ask Ed for a more detailed explanation as to differential across the area if you want. But I don't have that on me right now. With regards to Councillor Berman's comments, actually licensing built up a ridiculous surplus of £300,000 by the Tory administration. So that's the reason we're having to reduce things now. That's the reason I get phone calls every single day saying, what are you doing with the money? What are you doing with the money? What are you doing with the money? Because the Conservative administration previously had built up an insane surplus of £300,000 for the licensing department, which rightly now we're putting back down again because the current figures are obscene.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Saunders, you have spoken already, so again, unless it's a point of order.
No, it was a point of information, just that we have really just one main market trader in Newhaven who a lot of people enjoy, and that's why I asked a specific question about the numbers in each town. If Councillor MacLeod could come back to me at a later point, that's fine. I'm supportive of his fees and charges. It's just some information. He can do that afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Democratic Services, can we note, please, an action for Councillor MacLeod to respond on that point, please? I don't see anyone else raising their hands. I haven't really heard any strong dissent to this, so I'm going to take it that everyone's in agreement unless someone wishes to raise a hand now and suggest that we need a vote on it. Okay, I don't see anyone requesting that, so the recommendations are now agreed. That takes us to item 12, notices of motion. The first motion is to support proportional representation. The motion is being proposed by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Denis. Councillor Robinson, we do have a full copy of your motion in the papers. Do you wish to speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to read it out just for the benefit of any residents that may have been listening, but I will leave it at your discretion if you think I need to do that.
It is available to the public, but yes, if you're able to give us a summary, that might be helpful for those dialing in. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's a motion to reject first past the post, a voting system that is currently used in the UK, and to support the introduction of a form of proportional representation in which all votes count equally. And it's basically just been introduced in Wales. And the reason that I would like Lewis to take this forward is that the electoral system used for local elections, which is first past the post, isn't a fair system, because it means that votes do not have equal weight and many votes are wasted. And it leads to voter apathy and a feeling of disconnection from local democracy. Many seats are not even contested, and certain parties are overrepresented. Across the county, this may vary between the two larger parties, leaving those who have cast their vote for one of the other parties unrepresented, even when receiving large numbers. And I think we see that throughout the whole of the country. The alternative to first past the post is a system of proportional representation, or PR as it's like to be called, where votes cast for parties translate more or less directly into seats won. There are many variants of PR, and the single transferable vote system is already in use for elections in Scotland and Northern Ireland. And recently, the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, introduced by the coalition government in Wales, will introduce votes at 16, greater diversity in local government, and the ability for councils to choose their voting system between first past the post and STV. Therefore, we call on the council to agree that a move to use the use of proportional representation for local elections would boost turnout, makes the council more representative of the political makeup of its residents, which I think is important, and improve the quality of its decision making, thereby benefiting all Lewes District residents. This council therefore asks the Chief Executive to write to the government to request that it changes electoral law to permit such a move, and to contact the Local Government Association, asking them to assess the Welsh policy and investigate the legal options for improving democracy and participation in local government in England. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Denis, I understand that you're seconding this motion. It looks as though you would like to speak on it as well.
Councillor Johnny Denis, yes, if that's all right, Chair, I just wanted to say a few words. When this present council was elected in 2019, the results showed us that the Conservatives became far and away the largest single group because they had elected the largest number of councillors, more than twice that of the second largest party, the Greens. The unfairness of this is that the Greens actually polled more votes than the Conservatives across the whole district. If all votes had been counted proportionately, Greens and Conservatives would each have won 11 seats. Lib Dems 9, Labour 4 and Independents 4, giving rise to quite a different type of council. What proportional representation would offer us is a genuine representation by votes cast. It would shake up the status quo to better reflect what the public actually voted for. And indeed, this alliance that now runs the council, this cooperative alliance, is because those parties, those groups that are in the alliance recognise that most people in the district didn't vote for the largest party, and actually by coming together they were able to represent those people. But if we had a fairer voting system, people will be able to vote more accordingly to their principles, to their needs, and we can create quite different sorts of local government. Indeed, it might even, while it would defavour the Conservatives at the district, it might give them opportunities to have representation where they've not been seen for 30 years, such as places like Lewes. And I think that it's really worth us taking on board how a different voting system would lead to a different kind of politics, one which needs people to communicate, to build alliances, to look at shared values. And it's that sort of politics that must be the future. And I really endorse this, and I'm really pleased that I'm able to second this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. So if any councillors who wish to speak on this motion could raise an electronic hand, please, or shout in the case of Councillor Adeniji. First of all, I have Councillor McCleary, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor James McCleary. Very brief. I don't think it would surprise anybody at all to know that obviously as a Lib Dem councillor, I'm very supportive of this motion. Lib Dems, of course, have campaigned for decades for a fairer voting system, and I imagine the vote is going to kind of go down party lines. I'm sure that we'll hear the case being put for our current distorted system by Conservative members. However, I think what's really important about this, and what I really welcome, is it's being proposed by our Labour colleagues. It's a really important step in the right direction, because of course, as one of the two really big parties in this country, and one who would likely lead any government that will succeed the current disaster that has been cast upon us from Westminster, it's really important to see Labour councillors taking the lead on this, and the Labour Party. So I really welcome it, and thank Councillor Robinson for bringing this motion to us. Obviously, it has my full-throated support. As you would imagine, and anyone takes the time to have a look through any Lib Dem manifesto for the last 30 years, you'll find it in there. So I'm sure that won't shock anybody, but I want to really thank Councillor Robinson for bringing it. I really support this motion. I think it's great that the devolved nations have led the way in terms of more proportional systems of elections in Wales, and also obviously Scotland has a form of proportional system. So this is great news. Obviously, I fully support it, and I look forward to us taking it forward in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Chair. I am against this concept, as was predicted by the proposers and seconders. I feel we're being a little bit like Nicola Sturgeon. We didn't like the result of a referendum, so we'll ask it again. This was put to the country, and the country came out as a majority against proportional representation. And I think that the country still is against proportional representation. And so that seems to me the way we should go in a democratic country. Furthermore, I feel that the proportional representation may, in a local election such as we have in Lewes, where we have a number of independents, but they're not allied to each other, but entirely independents, will actually disadvantage them and therefore disenfranchise a significant part of the electorate. So on all these reasons, I would urge people not to support this proposition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Councillor O'Connor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased to hear Councillor McCleary applauding the Labour Party for it, and sort of it's one of those things within the Labour Party that is an ongoing debate, but many constituency parties are moving towards this, and it's a matter of changing our own party. But we here in this in Lewes district, us three councillors, Labour councillors, are definitely in favour of this, and we've seen the benefits of working together with colleagues, and we're seeing the benefits of getting policies in place which are in line with our shared values. So that is proof of the pudding, really, and I would definitely commend this. And I also think we all agree that fairness is at the heart of why we're involved in local politics. And I'm surprised the Conservatives wouldn't agree with something which is so clearly fair. But there we go. That's the way things happen, isn't it? But so I also, the last point I want to make is, the fact is that if you are in an area which is, which is dominated by one particular party, your vote doesn't count. That discourages you from voting. And again, that's not fair. So I really think we should vote for this and work towards it in the long term. So thank you, Chair. I would commend this motion and agree with it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. I actually agree with what Councillor Berman said, actually. I do think that there is severe concerns about the disenfranchisement of independents in this whole situation. And I would have been happy to have supported a motion which actually suggested that we take away political badges alongside the voting, alongside the names on the voting slips. I think people will then be voted in for what they do or what they suggest they're going to do for their communities, rather than, and I apologise, that's my doorbell going in the rear, so I apologise for that. But that's what I would prefer to see. I'm afraid I will not be able to support this motion because of those concerns that have been raised by Councillor Berman, and I completely agree with. I'm more than happy to work together with colleagues as long as it's free of political influence, and that's why I will not be supporting this motion today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just be clear? This country has never had a vote on proportional representation. Never. That wasn't in the referendum. It wasn't a vote on proportional representation. It was an alternative voting system. It was completely different to what PR is offering. So we haven't had a referendum on it whatsoever, and we totally should.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Meyer, please.
I think my point's just been made, actually, but I don't want to be too long. It does seem that everybody likes to talk at these meetings, and I'm not sure whether we need to delay it. I'm delighted that Labour have brought this forward. I used to be a member of the Labour Party, actually, so I'm particularly keen on that, and I echo what James McCleary has said. This alliance has been brought about, actually, by virtue of the fact that we share some values. And the fact that some of you seem to be rather frightened by the idea that we might actually change something. I'm reminded of the 1832 Reform Act. I mean, should we not have had that? It's complete arrant nonsense to believe that we have to continue with the system we've got forever and ever and ever. Anyone who believes that, frankly, I cease to wonder at the words of apparent wisdom that are ushered in these meetings. I totally support this proposal, and I very much hope that one day in my lifetime we might see it. But I have to say, given the way this country is developing, I'm at the moment rather sceptical we ever will. But let's live in hope, as we've tried to do all evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Councillor Peterson, please.
Thank you. Being a Conservative, I'm not at all in favour of proportional representation. I think it creates a political class that just changes hands, like changes chairs. It's like a merry-go-round. The best thing about the system as it is that people can vote for, if you believe in Labour's policies, if you believe in if you think you're a Liberal, which used to be slightly different from a Labour person, or Green. It gives you a choice, and I believe that choice is good, and actually it should be honoured. And the big advantage of our system is that the governing party can be removed totally if it dissatisfies the electorate. So we don't just have the same people like in Europe. You don't get a political class like you have governing Europe that just breeds extremism on the edges, like Marine Le Pen in Germany, the Bavarian Party. Eventually PR will create extremes. That's what it always does. In Israel, extreme parties top up Netanyahu. It's thoroughly undesirable. It's not, you can't get rid of the people who you're fed up with. In our system, you can get rid of the people who you're fed up with. It's like a vent. It's a vent of anger, or it could be a vent of pleasure to vote someone in. And I think that freedom is more important than a whole load of politicians ganging together and saying, well, I presume the Liberals lost Lewis to Greens for a reason. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't for, and that reason that the electorate voted against the Liberals in Lewis as a whole should be respected. So I think PR is just a con that's put forward by people who just want to sit in power for ages, and it's got dangerous consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Lindingson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Isabel Lillington. There are many arguments, aren't there? There are pros and cons for the first past the post. There are pros and cons for all the different proportional representation systems. So I don't think we can go into all those arguments tonight. I think we all know the arguments on each side. I am rather surprised that this notice of motion has come forward, though, because I would have thought that when we have a main meeting about the budget and we've been discussing all the developments from the COVID pandemic, that there were far more important things to worry about than the voting system. So I'm slightly surprised that we're spending a lot of time on it tonight when we've got some more important things. But I would like to suggest an amendment, or maybe somebody could explain why it's in there. But why is the council asking the chief executive to write? I'm not sure why he should be embroiled in this. Wouldn't it be better for the leader to write rather than the chief executive? So I'm just putting forward that as a suggestion or amendment, if anybody wants to second it. Because I'm sure, it would be better coming from the leader of the council, and I'm sure the government will be absolutely delighted to receive yet another letter from the leader of Lewes District Council about yet another issue that it doesn't like. So that is my suggestion for an amendment. But really, can we just get on with this and have a vote on it? Because I really don't see that it's that important at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Livingston. If you want that to be considered as an amendment, I'm afraid we need to debate that. But first of all, let me go to the proposer of the motion, Councillor Robinson, and ask whether you would be happy to accept the amendment that Councillor Livingston has proposed.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robinson, no, I would not. Thank you.
Okay, in which case we need a seconder for Councillor Livingston's proposed amendment, please. I see Councillor Berman's hand. So now we're debating the amendment that Councillor Livingston has proposed. Councillor Livingston, you do have an opportunity to talk to your amendment if you think there's stuff that you wish to say that you haven't.
Chair, sorry, mate. Sorry, may I interject? I think Councillor Miller had his hand up. He looks like he's yes. So I don't know if you've missed him. Sorry, Chair.
I had seen Councillor Miller's hand, but I think we've now got a proposal of an amendment, and I think we have to debate the amendment first, is my understanding of the procedure. So, Councillor Miller, I will come back to you. If you wish to discuss the main motion, or obviously if you'd like to make your point in the amendment, you're very welcome as well. So now we're discussing the amendment. Councillor Livingston, would you like to give any further details of your proposed amendment?
Thank you, Chair. I really didn't want to prolong this. So I'm sorry if I prolonged the debate when I was trying to finish it. But it's really that I really don't see why the chief executive should have to write. I don't see why we should involve him in this. So I don't see why it can't be the leader or somebody else, but let's propose the leader to write. So that was my only intention, was just I don't see why the leader can't write rather than the chief executive. But I really don't want to prolong this too long. So I'm not sure whether we can just I guess somebody else might want to speak on this as to why Councillor Robinson doesn't want to accept that. But presumably we'll have to have a vote on this amendment now. So perhaps we can, unless Councillor Robinson, well, perhaps she could first explain why she won't accept it, and then can we just go to a vote and get it over with and then vote on the main thing? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Livingston. Of course, if you wish to, as Councillor Robinson didn't accept your proposed amendment, if you wish to withdraw it, I think we could. But otherwise, Councillor Robinson, would you like to give any reason why you don't wish to accept the amendment?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robinson. Well, the chief executive is what he is, the chief executive of the council. He represents the council. He's the highest officer of the council. So that's why you would, somebody of that high stature, you would expect them to write to government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Next, Councillor Miller, I have your hand next. I don't know whether you want to talk to Councillor Livingston's amendment or defer your comments until we get back to the main motion.
Well, mine was just on the main motion.
Okay, fine. So then I've got Councillor O'Keefe's hand to talk about the amendment. Councillor O'Keefe.
I'm talking about whichever thing you like, the amendment. I just felt I ought to say something. I do think that proportional representation is a splendid thing nationally, but I'm afraid I can't support it locally because it would be like a turkey voting for Christmas and then getting eaten. There would be no way I would ever be elected as an independent. So there we are. I'm going to abstain. I totally support it nationally, but I think that locally we've actually shown that you don't have to have proportional representation to get a Rainbow Alliance that represents as many people as possible. I think we did it already. Anyway, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I don't have any more hands so on this amendment, so I'm afraid that I do think we now need to move to...
I indicated.
Yes, I thought you wanted to talk on the motion rather than the amendment, Councillor Miller.
Yes, that's correct. I've written.
So I think the procedure is now that we need to vote on Councillor Linnington's amendment. I'm afraid, and then we vote. We continue the debate on the motion as amended, and then we vote on the motion. So, do you wish to make your comments now, or wait until we've had the vote on the amendment?
I'm happy to wait.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Berman, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say a few words in support of the amendment, as I seconded it. I think the key point here is that this is actually a political stance that is being proposed, and therefore I think it's more appropriate that the political leader of the council, rather than his officer, proposes it to government. That's the reason why I support the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Berman. So then we'll move to the vote. I will try and make it as quick as possible. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask Oliver Dixon, the Head of Legal Services, to do a name call. Perhaps people could just say for, against or abstain rather than calling out their name if Oliver, that is acceptable from a Democratic Services point of view.
Say again, Chair, just to clarify.
Do people need to say their names as you call out their names, or can they just say for, against and abstain?
Once I call their name, just for them to say for, against or abstain, and I'll record it against each one.
Great. So if we could just move through it reasonably quickly to Councillor Linnington's point about trying to finish the debate. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we're voting on Councillor Linnington's amendment, which is to change the motion that this council therefore asks not the chief executive but the leader to do the 2 bullet points at the end. So for, against or abstain. Councillor Adeniji.
Abstain.
Councillor Amy.
Abstain. Against.
Councillor Banks.
Against.
Councillor Vixen.
For.
Councillor Bird.
Against.
Councillor Brett. Councillor Brett.
Against.
Against.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Berman.
For.
Councillor Carr.
Against.
Councillor Clay.
Against.
Councillor Collier.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Davey.
For the political leader to write, not the chief executive.
Okay, it's just the wording is the leader. So I take that as a vote for the amendment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Denis.
Councillor Denis, against.
Councillor Duhigg.
For.
Councillor Gauntlet.
Against.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones. Voting on the...
Sorry about that, Chair. Just chasing my cursor over the screen. For.
Councillor Linnington.
For.
Councillor Jim Lord.
4.
Councillor Sylvia Lord.
4.
Councillor McCleary.
Against.
Councillor MacLeod.
This is completely pathetic, but against.
Councillor Makepeace.
Against.
Councillor Manley.
Against.
Councillor Maskell.
4.
Councillor Meyer.
Against.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Nicholson.
Against.
Councillor O'Brien.
Against.
Councillor O'Connor.
Against.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Against.
Councillor Papanikolaou.
4.
Councillor Peterson.
4.
Councillor Rigdon.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Ross.
Against.
Councillor Rutland.
Against.
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders, as I'm against the whole motion anyway, I will abstain.
Councillor Von Kerthy.
Against.
Thank you. Chair, the outcome of that vote was that there were 14 votes for the amendment, 22 against, 2 abstentions. So the amendment is lost.
Okay, so the amendment didn't pass. So we now go back to continuing to discuss the motion as unamended. So as originally put. Councillor Miller, you had your hand up to raise some points on the original motion, I believe.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Well, it's clear, isn't it, that some parties on the council don't support the current voting system, even though they've been elected under it and are in administration because of it. Instead, they prefer backroom deals to be done between political parties, and rather than having people stand on their manifesto and be elected to deliver on their manifesto, because then they can pick and choose what parts of their manifestos they decide that they want to include and deliver upon. And so it gives politicians the ability to actually not listen to the public at all, but to do exactly what they want. As a result of proportional representation, there's no clear governance or decision making. Instead, you have this often stalemate, as we've seen in Germany before. And likewise, you can have in most systems, it's very hard to attach a single representative to an elected area to stand up for that area on their behalf, whether it be a ward or constituency. The alternative vote referendum was lost significantly. And so it's rather a shame this evening that all the Rainbow Alliance or Coalition, whatever they call themselves, have the ability to talk about is how they vote for themselves or how people can vote for them. It's a shame that we're spending so much time this evening focusing on such an insignificant issue at a time of national and local crisis for most residents. Instead, we're debating for half an hour, 40 minutes, whether to write a letter or not. And I don't hear any protestations or haven't seen any notice of motions calling for boundary changes where the Isle of Wight as a constituency has 100,000, for example, residents on it electing 1 MP, but the Isle of Skye, for example, has 30, and that, in my view, is far more important to try and make sure that people's vote counts equally in different parts of the country. But we also have local elected politicians related to that area that they represent, and also that we have clear governance as well, so that we can actually deliver as politicians rather than keep debating things and not making any strides forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Livingston, you've spoken already on this, so is it a point of order, please? Oh.
Yes, it is a point of order. Thank you. I'm sorry to prolong this, but could Oliver Dixon just please check those numbers? It doesn't affect the outcome of the vote, but I thought it was 15 for, 21 against, and 2 abstentions. Whereas he said it was 14 for and 22 against. I don't see how that can be possible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Livingston.
It doesn't affect the outcome. So
it doesn't affect the outcome.
Yeah.
And so can I ask that both Democratic Service and Oliver Dixon check this perhaps offline, because I don't think it's going to affect the debate now. If there's no one else wishes to speak, I'd be quite keen to move to a vote on the original motion. Councillor MacLeod, you have your hand up. You've also spoken as well, Councillor MacLeod. I'm sorry. So is this a point of order again?
Oh, no, don't worry then, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacLeod. So, yes, sorry, Councillor Robinson, would you like to sum up on the debate, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just think, personally, this is the most democratic way of involving people that are marginalised. Loads and loads of people don't vote. And I think this would be a fantastic way of getting people to vote, especially younger people. Thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Okay, Oliver Dixon, Head of Legal Services, please could we run through the list again, and if people could, if councillors could just respond for, against or abstain again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is now a vote on the motion as originally put by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Adeniji.
Against.
Councillor Amey.
For.
Councillor Banks.
For.
Councillor Bixson.
Against.
Councillor Bird.
For.
Councillor Brett.
For.
Councillor Berman.
Against.
Councillor Carr.
For.
Councillor Clay.
For.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Davey.
Against.
Councillor Denis.
For.
Councillor Duhigg.
Against.
Councillor Gauntlet.
For.
Councillor Jones.
So against.
Councillor Linnington.
Against.
Councillor Jim Lord.
Against.
Councillor Sylvia Lord.
Against.
Councillor McCleary.
For.
Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Councillor Makepeace.
For.
Councillor Manley.
For.
Councillor Maskell.
Against.
Councillor Maskell, can you repeat what you said?
Against.
Against, I heard, thank you. Councillor Meyer.
I'm for.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor O'Connor.
For.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Abstain.
Councillor Papanikolaou.
Against.
Councillor Peterson.
Against.
Councillor Rigdon.
Against.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Rutland.
Against.
Councillor Saunders.
Against.
Councillor Von Kerthy.
For.
Thank you. Chair, the results of that vote was that there were 20 votes for the motion, 17 against, 1 abstention. So the motion was carried.
Thank you, Oliver. So the motion has passed. Thank you. Just to confirm to councillors, we do have both the head of legal services and the head of democratic services also tallying the votes here. So we will check the vote from the other vote. There isn't just one person counting the votes at the moment. Okay, so we move to motion 2, the second motion to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. The bill is being proposed by Councillor Bird and seconded by Councillor Brett. Councillor Bird, again, we do have a full copy of your motion in the papers, but would you speak to your motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I will speak to the motion. So this is a motion to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. Councillor Nicholson outlined some of the bold practical measures we're taking to tackle the climate emergency earlier. And this motion is about sending a message to government to show the kind of leadership on climate change that we and other councils are taking needs to be replicated at a national level. The Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill was introduced as a private member's bill in September last year, and it sets out an emergency path for the UK to follow in addressing climate change. It also proposes the creation of a citizens' assembly that will contribute to the work of government in delivering a climate and ecological emergency strategy. This bill aims to ensure that the UK plays its fair and proper role in limiting global temperatures to the 1.5 degrees C that was recently recommended by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So to do this, we need to take account of the UK's entire greenhouse gas footprint domestically and internationally, and necessitate some real action on emissions reductions, and also need to circumscribe any proposed reliance on speculative future carbon capture technologies. Something that I remember as an officer being spoken about 15 years ago when there was a demonstration fund to promote carbon capture technologies, and none of those actually exist at the moment. Also, the bill seeks to address the ecological emergency and to conserve the natural world by protecting and restoring the UK's ecosystems with a focus on biodiversity, soils and natural carbon sinks. It wants to mitigate the damage to nature caused by supply chains domestically and internationally, and importantly to account for the UK's ecological footprint. This council has indeed facilitated a citizens' assembly in the form of the Community Climate Action Forum. And this forum will hold the council to account on the actions and proposals outlined in our recently published Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy. We did not declare an ecological emergency in July 2019, which in retrospect was a slight oversight, and when we declared the climate emergency. So supporting the climate ecological emergency bill gives the council the opportunity to publicly declare that we recognise the severe and increasingly critical threats that are facing nature. As you may be aware, the Environment Act has been delayed for a third time until at least autumn this year, and the UK this year will host COP26, the International Climate Summit, in December. And recently, you may have heard in the news that plans have been proposed to build the first deep coal mine for 30 years. And over 40 Conservative MPs have signed a letter to support this. It's simply not good enough in the face of the emergency that we face. So supporting this motion sends out a clear message that we believe the government is not doing anything near enough to tackle the climate and ecological emergency with the necessary urgency that demands. So as part of this motion, we call on the council to lend its support to the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill that was presented to the government on the 2nd of September by welcoming and supporting the bill. And I'm sure Councillor Leamington will appreciate this, by asking the leader of the council to write to all local MPs and asking them to support the bill in public and in Parliament. And where not already happening, that we seek to align the council strategies when they are new or reviewed with the aims and the goals of the Climate Ecological Emergency Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Brett, I understand that you're seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak as the seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to actually say very much to add to that because I think Councillor Bird has laid everything out extremely eloquently. I do find it incredibly disappointing that this bill has not been processed yet through Parliament. The government is being very tardy, and I, for one, will be very.
Thank you, Councillor Brett. Would any councillors who wish to speak on this motion please raise a hand? The first I have is Councillor Saunders, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I hope that all of the members of the council will seek to support this bill. I personally will be supporting it. My only concern is I would like to see an amendment based on the last motion. The member that was proposing the last motion asked for the letter to come from the Chief Executive because she felt it added more credence to the letter that was going in. So possibly I would ask if we could have an amendment to ask the Chief Executive of the Council rather than the Leader of the Council to write in the same vein, because it seems that the Alliance feel that it has more credence coming from the Chief Executive as the Chief Executive Officer of the Council as a whole. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. So back to Councillor Bird and Councillor Brett. Would you accept Councillor Saunders' proposed amendment? I think you're muted, Councillor Bird.
I mean, I don't think it really needs an amendment. I think that the leader has enough weight, in my opinion, that's the way it's worded, and I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bird. In that case, Councillor Saunders, do you wish to press for an amendment, or are you happy to proceed with the motion as proposed?
Well, I would like to see this amended. As I say, the last motion, there seemed to be additional credence with the letter from the Chief Executive rather than the leader, and I'm just concerned that if it comes from the leader, there is an opportunity for some political wins, as it were, going forward. And I just think it's fairer if it comes from a Chief Executive Officer rather than the Leader of the Council in this instance. But as I say, I'm very supportive of the motion. I'd like to see it go through, and it's a simple amendment as to who the letter comes from. And as I say, the last motion, it was discussed and it felt that it was more credence coming from that particular individual, and I'd like to see that. So hopefully I'll get somebody to second it so as we can vote on that motion. Thank you.
Okay, obviously, as you've just said, Councillor Saunders, we will need a seconder and then we would need to vote on the amendment. Does anyone wish to second Councillor Saunders' proposed amendment, please? Councillor Lington and Councillor Bird, I see you've both got your hands up. I'm not sure if either of you are proposing to second it.
Councillor Lington, no, I was waiting to speak on the main motion.
Sure, thank you. So at the moment, I don't think I have a seconder for Councillor Saunders' proposed amendment. Okay, Councillor Saunders, you accept that?
I just see that Councillor Bird is wishing to speak, maybe not to second, but I see that he's got his hand raised, Chair.
Yes, given that he didn't want to accept your amendment, I doubt he's wishing to second it, but Councillor Bird, do you want to confirm?
Yes, I will confirm. I don't want to accept it. I mean, I stand by the motion as it's worded. I think the leader has enough weight, in my opinion, that the letter comes from him. Okay, Councillor O'Brien, is your hand up to second this motion, please? Can we not have any other hands until we confirm whether we have a seconder for this, please? Okay, Councillor O'Brien, are you seconding this motion?
No, I'm waiting to speak. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a seconder? I don't think I do. Okay, so sorry, Councillor Saunders. So if we could continue with the discussion on the motion, I think it's Councillor Linnington next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Isabel Linnington. I think this is a great shame, actually. I would love to support it, but I can't support this. I think it's a great shame that you've chosen to put forward the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill to support, when all you had to do was put in a motion to declare an ecological emergency, and then we could have all got behind that, and we could have all supported that. But instead, you've chosen to put in the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, and I will explain why I can't support it. I think, well, partly that this has also been delayed. I think there's probably no chance of it coming back in this Parliament, so I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere. But that's no reason not to support it. But the main sticking point for me is the Citizens' Assembly. We know that this bill has been, the main sponsor is Extinction Rebellion, and what they've put in this, and I know other people were involved in writing it, is that as part of this whole process, there would be they want to contract out, if you like, the whole of the policy to what they call a reputable independent body, which would then convene a Citizens' Assembly. And the Citizens' Assembly would then have some experts, but we don't know who's going to choose those experts, of course. There are different opinions from experts, but presumably they would all be from one type of opinion. And if the Assembly then agrees whatever's proposed, the Secretary of State then must implement the strategy. So it's not can or should be advised to do something. He must do whatever the Citizens' Assembly tells him to do. So this completely bypasses the normal parliamentary processes. And these measures that could be proposed could have huge impacts on, families, communities, the economy. And yet it's going to be a relatively small number of people in this Citizens' Assembly who I think are supposed to be, I'm not quite sure how they're going to choose them. And they will decide what the Secretary of State has to do. So to me, that is the main reason why I cannot support this. I think it's the main sticking point. So, it would have been much simpler. Why couldn't you have just asked for a declaration of an ecological emergency, and we could have all got behind that? The other thing is, we have just spent 18 months doing a climate change and sustainability strategy. And one of those action plans, one of the action points in that strategy is to form a biodiversity strategy. So wouldn't it have been a lot simpler if you just declared an ecological emergency and made sure that the actions in the climate change and sustainable strategy and the new biodiversity strategy covered the things you need to do in relation to the ecological emergency? Instead of trying to get us to support something which, we just can't support in its current form. So for that reason, I am not supporting this, and I think it's a great opportunity lost when we could have actually all got behind something and made a really good job of something, and instead we're having to vote against something just because the wrong thing was put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Livingston. Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could just say how disappointed I am that the shadow lead for the environment isn't going to vote for the climate, to support the climate and ecological emergency bill. I just find that extraordinary. I'd just like to say that as a Green Council, I absolutely support this. It's not just about declaring ourselves an ecological emergency. It's about supporting a really important bill, which I should say has not just been written by activists, but also by lawyers and scientists. It has huge support right across parties and across the spectrums of those who care about the huge challenges that are in front of us. And of course, it's been sponsored by Caroline Lucas, which makes me particularly proud as a Green to, to know and to support. Although I should say MPs from all parties do support it. I also just think it's really timely for ourselves as an administration to be supporting this. We've just had a cabinet at which, thanks to the amazing leadership of Councillor Bird, we've just voted on our own climate change strategy and action plans, which is incredibly exciting. Also, at the same cabinet, we had some planning guidance to really put the climate and ecological emergency right at the heart of the ways in which we work with the developers going forward. So we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk as well. And I think this is completely timely. And just to say, it's not in, obviously we're doing everything we can at a local level, but that's not enough. And I absolutely agree, we should be putting pressure on government to do their bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. I don't see any other hands. Councillor, I do see Councillor Berman's hand.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reinforce actually what Councillor Lillington said, because I wouldn't like Councillor O'Brien to portray our group as not supporting the climate and environmental emergency. We're very strong supporters of it. What we are also very strong supporters of is parliamentary democracy, and a little bit like the proportional representation bill. We feel that the bill as proposed, the bill that you want to support, undermines the parliamentary democracy by insisting on having an extra body that is going to be able to dictate terms to our parliament. And that is why we cannot support it. We fully support doing everything we can locally and nationally to protect our environment and to be as green as we are able. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. No more hands. Yes, there is. There's Councillor Duhigg's hand. Councillor Duhigg, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I echo some of what Isabel Lillington has said. Would it not be better if we could work with the government to make the environment bill better? I can understand, I can see what you're trying to say in motion 2. Within Peacehaven Town Council, we have a working party that are working towards climate change and to include ecological, so not emergency, but looking ecologically at the area. And it's very, very important to us as a town and the residents. I was just wondering how, before this motion was put together, how much dialogue was had throughout the district with town and parish councils to get an idea of what they are doing. I know what's happening in Peacehaven Town Council regarding the working party of what I've just said, but before this motion was written, do we have any extended evidence of what's happening elsewhere? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duhigg. If no more hands, then Councillor Bird, would you like to respond and maybe answer some of Councillor Duhigg's points in your response?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, we have engaged with parish and town councils. I mean, I myself have spoken to at Peacehaven Council to the climate group there, and through the Ouse Valley Cares project. I mean, we're actually working very closely on a number of climate projects and initiatives over the next couple of years. So, and through the development of the sustainability climate change strategy, there was a lot of engagement. So yes, I think, you know, the short answer is we cannot trust the government to actually tackle this climate emergency with the urgency that it requires. Once again, it is being left to individuals and groups and organisations and local councils to actually lead on this. We have 9 years left. The government was shamed into a climate emergency by the actions of young people and groups like Extinction Rebellion, who brought it back on the agenda. I don't agree that this is just a climate extinction bill. It actually has the support of 98 MPs. It's really necessary to push the government into action. To delay the Environment Bill for the third time is unforgivable, given where we are after Brexit. So, you know, this sends a clear message that they need to match the energy and the urgency being shown by local authorities at that government level, especially in the way when the world's eyes will be on us during COP26. And to look at opening a coal mine, for 40 Conservative MPs to support that is just unbelievable. And on the question of the Assembly, what that does is it gives people a chance to actually feed into the democratic process on the most important issue of our time. So, you know, I urge you all to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. There's obviously been some disagreement on this, so I'll put the motion to a formal vote. Oliver Dixon, Head of Legal Services, please can you read out councillors' names? And once again, please just say for, against or abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a vote on item 12B, motion 2, unamended. Councillor Adeniji. Councillor Adeniji. I'll wait. I'll try Councillor Adeniji again at the end of the roll call. Councillor Amy.
For.
Councillor Banks.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
Against.
Councillor Bird.
For.
Councillor Brett.
For.
Councillor Berman.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, couldn't get it to work. Against, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Carr.
For.
Councillor Clay.
For.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Davey.
Against.
Councillor Denis.
For.
Councillor Duhigg.
Sorry, I'm not going to just have one answer. I still really need to have a little bit more explanation on this paper. So as the content of it and the reply is not what I feel is open enough on this point of agenda 12B, I'm going to vote against. Thank you.
Councillor Gauntlet.
For.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones, I didn't hear your vote.
I am on. Hello, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, is that Councillor Jones?
Yes.
And your vote, please?
Against.
Against. Councillor Linnington.
Against.
Councillor Jim Lord.
Against.
Councillor Sylvia Lord.
Against.
Councillor McCleary.
For.
Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Councillor Makepeace.
For.
Councillor Manley.
For.
Councillor Maskell.
Against.
Councillor Meyer.
For.
Councillor Miller.
Against.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor O'Connor.
For.
Councillor O'Keefe.
For.
Councillor Papanikolaou.
Against.
Councillor Peterson.
Against.
Councillor Rigdon.
Against.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ross.
For.
Councillor Rutland. Councillor Rutland.
microphone was muted. Against.
Against. Councillor Saunders.
I'm for.
Councillor Von Kerthy.
For.
I'm just going to try Councillor Adeniji one last time. Councillor Adeniji, can I take your vote if you're on the line or on the phone? No. Okay.
So, Oliver, if you could calculate the votes and see if Councillor Adeniji's will make a difference. I don't think it will. So.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so it wouldn't make any difference. Chair, on the votes cast, there were 22 for the motion, 15 against, and no abstentions. So with a majority of 7, Councillor Adeniji's vote would not have made a material difference. So the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill has passed. Thank you. I'm conscious that we've been going for over 2¼ hours now, and we still have some fairly substantive items left on the agenda. So unless anyone strongly disagrees, I'm going to propose a 10-minute comfort break now, let's say until 25 past. Any strong objections? Okay. Thank you. If we can pause the live stream and return 25 past, please, everyone. Thank you. Okay, thank you, councillors. Welcome back. So we continue with item 12C, motion 3 to support excluded UK and those excluded from COVID support schemes. This motion is being proposed by Councillor Makepeace and seconded by Councillor Banks. Councillor Makepeace, we do have the full copy of the motion, but would you speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will. And I'm delighted to be able to present something to the council that I believe everyone will be happy to hear. We're concerned about the 10% of the UK's workforce that has fallen through holes in the safety nets. Those are schemes that were quickly implemented in the early days, but have not been adjusted in spite of additional data to include 3 million working people. The third Treasury report of the economic impact of coronavirus that came out last week pointed, and I'm using Treasury words here, scant justification for not addressing the hard edges of coronavirus support schemes that have excluded key groups of working people. Now, these are people who've just started new jobs, freelancers, and those taking the plunge to become self-employed who need to balance their revenue with some PAYE work, but don't earn more than 50% from self-employment. Those using other sources of income, such as their pension, bereavement allowance, carers allowance, and the parents who've had some maternity or paternity leave in the previous 3 years, which has brought down the level of income below the threshold. All these forms of exclusion and more are found in our district, and it is the cause of hardship and suffering to many families. I want to highlight another form of exclusion, which speaks directly to point 3 on the motion. And this is support which has to be applied for online and through onerous form filling. It's not reaching some people simply because of their unfamiliarity with the process, their poor digital skills, or lack of equipment. This experience is deeply frustrating and humiliating for them. And the mental health aspect of these deprivations connected to being excluded cannot be ignored and will have profound ongoing consequences. So campaigns such as Excluded UK have asked that the government close the gaps in its financial support schemes and explores options to retroactively compensate people and businesses that were ineligible for the government's financial support. So we call on the council to 1, support the Excluded UK campaign and its efforts to support the excluded. 2, ask the leader on behalf of the council to sign Excluded UK's open letter to the Chancellor that calls for such consideration, calling on the government to address the disparities in support and to ensure that all can receive the support they need at this time. And 3, continue to promote the support available from organisations focused on financial inclusion and support in the district, including by requesting the Cabinet to consider what additional practical steps the Council can offer to support and advise whenever possible, and continuing to promote the Council's community hub that can assist with matters such as helping with support needs. I recommend that we approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Makepeace. Councillor Banks, I understand you are seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak to it?
Indeed, I do, Chair. Thank you. Yes, it's almost just to add to Councillor Makepeace's points. It's almost a year on from the first lockdown, and this issue still persists. The 3 million excluded span many different categories of workers from all walks of life: builders to beauticians, driving instructors, those working in our world-leading creative industries, and many more. They're often those who are natural risk takers, help create wealth, and are the lifeblood of our local and indeed our national economy. But everybody in these groups feel left behind, suffering from anxiety and panic attacks. They need to be treated fairly like anyone else. We know the mental health impacts on many of those excluded from support has been stark. The Centre for Mental Health has estimated that COVID-related unemployment has caused an additional 30,000 people to request services for depression. Those mental health impacts spread well beyond the 3 million individuals to their families and their support networks. Many report having to move back in with elderly parents and rely on their pensions. Marriages and relationships have been strained or ended. Parents of young children talk about the stress it's putting on their children. There are many heartrending stories of desperate need, including the use of food banks and some people not being able to switch on the heating this winter. They deserve better, so please do support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Could other councillors who wish to speak on this please raise an electronic hand? And the first I see is from Councillor Linnington, please.
Thank you, Chair. You may be surprised to know, but actually I'm fully in support of this. It's actually something that I wrote to our MP about back last year. And it's an issue that I think, it does affect an awful lot of people. There's a number of people who are in this awkward position that, again, they don't quite qualify for various reasons. And the schemes that were put in place, just, a lot of people don't fit into that scheme. A lot of the schemes had things like you had to show 3 years worth of accounts, and then they take the average profit over those 3 years. So if you had only recently started a business, you didn't qualify because you maybe only had 1 year's accounts to show. So there were lots of cases where none of the schemes that were put in place by the government, quite fitted for, as we say, a lot of people. So I'm very happy to support this because I think there could be something put in place. I'm not saying it would be easy because you would have to have a scheme that could not be abused. So there would have to be some sort of checks and balances on it to make sure that you had a genuine business, this sort of thing. But I don't think it's impossible to do that. And I think there could be a government scheme that had the necessary checks in it that could help an awful lot of people. And I'm not quite sure what level of support it could be, but if we're talking about very small businesses, it could have been just a flat rate grant. So I think there are all sorts of possibilities here that could be done. So I'm happy to support this. And I know our MP has also been representing a lot of our district residents on this as well and passing on their concerns. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linnington. Councillor MacLeod, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really important motion. I've recently been dealing with a local member who's actually given me permission to discuss it tonight. And I completely disagree with Isabel, who says Maria's been helpful, because in this case she certainly hasn't. We have 3 million people. I mean, it's a scary, scary, scary number that are not getting any help from this government whatsoever. And we can't ignore it anymore. These people are trying to run a family life. They're trying to put food on the table. They're trying to pay their fuel bills. They're trying to do basic everyday stuff, but they can't because they're not getting any financial support. And it's scary. And these are the people who run small businesses who really, really are looking out for us. And we need to look out for them. And I find it really difficult how cabinet members sitting in 10 Downing Street can sleep at night. I really do. I just don't get how they can totally and utterly ignore 3 million people. It's breathtaking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor Berman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Following up in some extent with what Councillor Linnington said, you may be surprised to find that I'm also entirely in support of this and have acted for a number of residents in my area who have been caught out by this really unfairly and really to quite a devastating extent. I also have been in touch with our MP, Maria Caulfield, who has been very supportive and active and has actually found some solutions. Furthermore, she has been not only supporting the group outside, but also in Parliament. She's made representation to the cross-party committee, looking into the matter, looking for better solutions to be made available to those who've been excluded. And she also has made representations ahead of the budget to the Chancellor, saying that she is putting her weight with ours to find better ways of looking after the people who have been blighted by the rigidity of the assessment of who can get help. It's very easy for those on ordinary PAYE. It's very complicated for the creatives and for those who are incipient entrepreneurs who have put in time and effort and not a lot of return yet. And then to find that after possibly 2 years of building, everything's thrown asunder, but they get nothing in terms of support. So she is with us and I am with you, and we would like to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Councillor Nicholson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Zoe Nicholson. This group of people is really, really important. I'm going to it's amazing to have such great cross-party agreement, given some of the discussions that we had earlier. One would wonder whether or not that was actually going to be possible, but it has been possible, so that's really great. The thing that I would like to update full council about is that James McCleary, leader, and myself have agreed a scheme as part of the additional restrictions support grant that we hope will go a very small way towards supporting some of the groups of people who find themselves in the excluded, the 3 million excluded, including enabling those people who have fallen out of the self-employed scheme to be able to apply to our additional hardship fund, and also those people who have made capital expenditure, which might cover people like taxi drivers, for example, to be able to apply into this. So we're taking some very practical steps, unlike the Chancellor, who still refuses to accept that even this group even exists, let alone how to solve the problem. So, but we've played a small part doing what we said we would do, which is make sure that we support those people who need it the most, playing a small part in trying to solve the problem. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Denis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Denis, I would really like to support this this motion. It's very sensible. It really highlights the vulnerabilities of so many of our residents, and it was really it was touching to hear the opposition actually agree and come along with this. And some of the things they say were the very arguments that we put forward at our last council meeting about or budget cabinet about universal basic income, which is something that we think is actually would underpin and protect people in all the vulnerable groups in the first place. So so it's great to hear Roy Byrne standing up for people and getting those protections in early. I really appreciate that. And this motion really highlights those people who've fallen through the cracks. And Councillor Nicholson has just highlighted how we as a council can do additional work. So I think there's plenty to be done here to support those most vulnerable people. That is something this alliance and this administration has been really keen on focusing on. And I think personally I'd be really happy to support this motion and support ongoing work in our council supporting those most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. Councillor McCleary, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just to echo what Councillor Nicholson was saying about our additional restricted grant scheme that we're going to be launching, that is quite an exciting thing for us to be doing. It's quite innovative, so it can be interesting to see how that goes. Hopefully, we're going to be able to support a lot of the people who are affected by the government's failure to support people adequately. And just thank Councillor Lillington for her support. I know that we've spoken about this previously, and I know she's sincere in her commitment to this, and I think it's really important that we have
support of people like Councillor Lennington in pushing this sort of initiative forward. Councillor Berman, as much as I admire your commitment to your party colleague, I'm afraid I've never seen any evidence that the local MP here, Maria Caulfield, is doing anything to help people in this group. Indeed, I've been contacted by people out of sheer desperation myself, who are trying to find somebody who will stand up for them on this issue. There's even been a national campaign group set up to represent people in this group. Unfortunately, we hear a lot from the government about how no one could have predicted various things. This has now been a problem for a year nearly. These people have had no support whatsoever. These are people who have fallen on desperate times and are simply told, oh, we'll go and claim universal credit. These are people who had their own businesses, who don't want to be on universal credit. They want to have success with their business and could not have known that their business would be destroyed by this pandemic, and the government would completely abandon them. So if Maria Caulfield is indeed doing anything on this, and I'm afraid I've seen no evidence to suggest that she is, then she rather needs to redouble her efforts, because there are a lot of people suffering out there, and our council can do a bit, and we are going to be doing a bit to try to support a small number of these people where we can. But only the government has the resources and the funds to actually support people in a major way and make a proper intervention. I really hope that the Chancellor and other government ministers and the Prime Minister will realise that there are people who are actually suffering out there and do something about it, rather than just telling us that no one could possibly have anticipated it and it's not their fault. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. I don't see any more hands, so Councillor Makepeace, do you wish to respond before we go to a vote?
I just wanted to say that I opened my comments with the remark that I believed everybody would support it, and thank you. That I'm sure everybody will. I think it's something that we share.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Makepeace. So I don't think I've heard any disagreement as to the need for this motion. So therefore, unless anyone disagrees now, I'll assume that everyone's supporting the motion and we won't put it to a vote. Okay, in which case the motion is now agreed. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 13, the calendar of meetings for 2021 to 22. This motion was going to be proposed by Councillor Manley, who I think has had to leave the meeting. So please could I have another proposer for the calendar of meetings?
I'll do it, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacLeod, and Councillor Brett. I think you are seconding it. The calendar of meetings will need to be ratified finally at the annual council in May. I don't know whether Councillor MacLeod, having just proposed it, or Councillor Brett, you wish to make any comments for it, or you just wish to propose and second it?
Just propose, Chair.
Okay. And just second, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So any councillors wishing to speak on it, please raise hands. And first I have Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak to this one. I have already raised serious concerns, as has a couple of my colleagues on the Planning Committee, about this proposed change on the Planning Applications Committee from a 3-week to a 4-week cycle. And I alerted officers to the problems that this will cause with our lesser authorities, the town and parish councils, who base their meeting schedule around the planning applications meetings. For instance, in Newhaven, we have a 3-weekly cycle to mirror that of the district council, and all of our other meetings, or the vast majority of our meetings, follow that same schedule. So we'll often have another committee meeting after planning, and then on a 6-weekly cycle, it used to be the full council meeting as well. So I was very disappointed to note that they had not been consulted, and a hasty email was sent out last week to the other authorities to ask for their input on this matter. So I'm rather concerned that we're going to be making a hasty decision today. I know, albeit to be ratified at the next meeting, but I've still got serious concerns about the effect this is going to have on the other authorities. And I'm also concerned about the reasoning behind the change. I know that Councillor O'Brien kindly phoned me last week to try and explain to me the reason that was given to her by officers about the proposed changes to the Planning Applications Committee and the transparency, if you like, and the ability for members of the public to put in their objections or support for various applications. But I still can't really see that and the logic behind that. So I would like to note that is an issue. I don't think we can make a decision on this today without having all of that feedback from the other authorities and the implications that our decision will have on the schedule of meetings, particularly if we're not ratifying it until May, and then we then maybe don't ratify it and go back to the 3-week schedule, which means that the town councils will have to change their schedule again. So I just think this has been ill-conceived at this late stage in the calendar year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. On that, you referred to the Councillor O'Brien, the portfolio holder for planning and regeneration. It'd be good to hear from her. I also wonder whether it'd be worth there we go, the chair of planning as well. So yes, Councillor O'Brien, you had your hand up first. So could you would you wish to respond to that, please?
I'm Councillor O'Brien, the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure. Thank you. I don't think we should spend too long discussing this. It's, you know, the move to a 3 to a 4 week cycle has been done because we're in extraordinary times, and there were very compelling reasons that our planning officers had for recommending this, due to the fact that actually what's really important is our residents get to have a say, and that was being cramped, which could not only have legal ramifications but also just isn't right. You know, we need to make sure residents that have the time to prepare before they make their submissions to a committee in our new online world. So just to say, you know, Councillor Saunders' concerns have been noted by officers and by myself. I've specifically asked if we could have a review after 6 months to make sure that the impact of the move from a 3 to a 4 week cycle is properly assessed with input from councillors, towns and parishes, and from the Planning Advisory Service, who are coming in to do a review of our planning committee, and that's done in really good time, so that when the next schedule is produced, or if there's a massive issue going on even before as an emergency, those things can be changed and it can be put back. But I think the important thing is we do what we have to do now, recognising we're in extraordinary times. We can't always pick and choose how, you know, the right thing to do. We just have to do it. But note those concerns, and absolutely let's have a really proper review after 6 months and make sure that is the right thing to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Davey, as chair of the Planning Committee.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Saunders, I have spoken, of course, and it's a long night, so I'm not going to pursue this. This is for democratic services. If we're going to ratify this in May, then we're going to ratify this in May, I would have thought, but that's for another moment. I think Councillor O'Brien and I agreed with officers. In the future, it will be 5 o'clock. We'll go back to 5 o'clock is my understanding, but I could be incorrect. But I don't think that's for tonight. That can be dealt with democratic services, in my view, Councillor O'Brien. I hope you agree with that. I have my other thoughts on that. And again, I shall not dwell upon them. They've all been discussed. I feel very strongly that Lewes District Council is its own sovereignty, and I feel also strongly that it has its own personality and it shouldn't be necessarily copycatting other authorities. That's a personal view, and I think that's all I have to say on that. Ratification will be in May, but it seems simple today simply to agree with the general calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Is there anyone on the phone who would be able to confirm or sort of deny Councillor Davey's point around the 5 p.m, the move to 5 p.m? No from Democratic Services. Okay, so we'll in which case couldn't we take that as an action to follow up afterwards? I understand, accept Councillor Davies' point that we should maybe just move ahead with ratifying this the rest of the calendar. Any other comments on this calendar?
Chair, can I just also mention that, of course, this announcement has been made about ending lockdown on June the 21st, which will only be 6 weeks after we finally ratify this calendar, and therefore possibly the need for this change may not be there. However, I do recognise that Councillor O'Brien has put in the caveat of a 6-monthly review. I accept that, and if, as Councillor Davey has mentioned, the officers can confirm that we go back to 5 p.m. I'd be willing to support the schedule as it stands, as long as it's 5 p.m. Thank you, Chair. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other hands. I think there is obviously an action for the cabinet member for planning, the head of the planning committee, Democratic Services and others to follow up on the timing of particularly the planning meetings. Is everyone happy to accept the calendar as is, with accepting there is going to be a review of those planning meetings, lots of between now and the final vote in May? Anybody wish to put this to the vote, or are we happy to accept it as it is?
Accept it as it is.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just make a point of information, Councillor Ross, just to say the review wouldn't happen before it's ratified in May. It'll be after 6 months, because we need to see how the committees work to be able to do the review on it, just so it's really clear. Thank you.
Okay, so with that clarification, is everyone still happy to accept this calendar?
Agreed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the calendar has been accepted. We move to item 14, written questions. 2 written questions have been received in accordance with procedure rule 12, which has been notified to all councillors and sent out in an agenda supplement. One question received from Councillor MacLeod and one from Councillor Banks, both to the leader of the council. The first question, Councillor MacLeod, would you like to ask your question to the leader, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I said, would the leader agree that we are facing a climate emergency? It is madness to progress the building of a new £1 billion dual carriageway between Lewes and Polegate. Would it not make more sense and be a lot cheaper to cut fares on the parallel railway and encourage drivers to switch from road to rail? Will he put on record his opposition to the new offline road through the Downs?
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor McCleary, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will be referring this item to the relevant cabinet member, Councillor O'Brien, but just to say in direct answer to the question, Councillor MacLeod, yes, I've always been opposed to an offline road through the Downs between Lewes and Polegate. It seems like utter madness to me. It's something that I've always campaigned against and always will campaign against. But I will hand over to Councillor O'Brien to give a fuller answer.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor MacLeod, for your question. As Councillor McCleary has already said, very happy to state this council's opposition to the A27 offline scheme. So an offline scheme, offline meaning not following the current route of the A27, but cutting into the countryside, would mean bulldozing great swathes of our ancient farmland in Lewes and in Wealdon, really so that drivers can move from one congested roundabout to another congested roundabout, with even the most optimistic estimates on this scheme showing just a few minutes saved. So this scheme ignores the really vocal opposition we're seeing from local villages along the possible route, including Glynde and Beddingham, and it's based on estimates which are already out of date. And it ignores the fact that the road is clearly designed to enable a load of new housing developments over in the Low Weald, which will then, of course, be car dependent, with all those new cars quickly outweighing any benefits. So I agree those hundreds of millions of pounds would be better spent on getting people out of their cars through reducing the need to travel by creating local jobs, better broadband, truly affordable and truly effective public transport, not on a pointless white elephant that actually won't solve the congestion, but will simply move it up along the road and ultimately could end up making it worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor MacLeod, you are entitled to a supplementary question if you want to ask it.
Yes, please, Councillor Ross. Thank you to both Councillor O'Brien and Councillor McCleary. Could the leader of the council also undertake to write to the MP, Maria Caulfield, and get a clear answer from her view on this issue importance to residents in my ward? She tells people in the villages along the A27 that she's against the new offline road, while she tells the people in Polegate she's in favour.
We missed a little bit of that question, Councillor MacLeod. Councillor McCleary, did you get enough of it to respond?
Yeah, I think I got the general gist, Chair. I'm very happy to write to the MP, Councillor MacLeod. It has been very confusing for residents that she has indeed told people in some of the villages that are affected by the road that she's against it, whilst she has told residents in Polegate, where perhaps it's more popular, that she's in favour of it. So I will undertake to get in touch with her, and we'll see if we can get a clear line out of her. I will not hold my breath. Nobody's managed it so far, but I'll do my best for you, Councillor MacLeod. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we move to question 2. Councillor Banks, would you like to ask your question to the leader, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've now all seen the horrifying news that the number of dwellings Lewes District Council is being forced to find land for is set to more than double to 782 a year, or 15,640 across a 20-year period. This would be devastating for our countryside and our open spaces across the district. Can the leader of the council provide an update on what the plan is to currently lobby the government to stop this and revert to a lower number, which reflects what our communities really need?
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor McCleary, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McCleary. Again, I'll refer this one to Councillor O'Brien as the relevant cabinet member for planning, but just to say very quickly, as I think Councillor Banks already knows, we've all been really shocked by that number, which has come out of the standard method for calculating housing numbers, and we are currently talking to MHCLG, but I'll allow Councillor O'Brien to give you a more detailed answer on that.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary, and thanks, Councillor Banks, for your question, and I share your horror. So currently Lewes District has just over 40,000 homes within it, and we've been set a new target by government starting from May this year to find space for more than 15,000 additional new homes over 20 years. So that's more than a third as many households again as we have currently. And I was just trying to put that in context for myself to see what that actually looks like in reality. I mean, basically that's 2 more Lewises in the district, or 1 1/3 new Seafords, or nearly 3 additional New Havens. So we're not talking small numbers here. So I'd add to that, some people were reassured when they heard about the government U-turn on housing figures, or it was what was called the mutant algorithm. However, I'm really sorry to disappoint you that hardly made a difference to us in Lewes District, as the government simply reverted to a previous version of these ever-changing algorithms, which was frankly equally dodgy. I think what it does show is that using algorithms and central targets is no fit way to design a planning system that works for local people. I'd like to state publicly while I'm here that our calculations for our future target are correct. That's using the standard methodology that James referred to, despite the inaccurate and somewhat unhelpful statements made on social media recently by our MP, and that government officials confirmed today we are using the correct formula. I'd also like to stress this is not Lewes District Council's target. This isn't our aim. It's a target set by government, and also that there's no appeal on the target. We will, however, do absolutely everything we can to compile the evidence that will demonstrate to an inspector, when we put our local plan through, if we can't make this impossible target, why that's the case. So that's about having the really cast iron evidence to show why we can't do that. And equally importantly, we'll continue to lobby government, as we have been doing, to change this broken target-based system, to stand up for our residents, for our countryside, our villages and our towns. And I'm appealing to our MP to work with me to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Banks, you're entitled to a supplementary question if you wish to ask one.
Yes, just to quickly ask what are the plans to move the lobbying up a gear on this issue? It's very worrying news to hear that the government's figures are indeed the correct ones. What can we do next to change them?
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. So it's a very, I understand, Councillor Banks, I understand the concern. We're going to be continuing, as Councillor O'Brien said, to lobby government directly. We're going to be writing to the government protesting this number because it is scandalously high, and I will be inviting the Leader of the Opposition to join us in doing that because it's a shared concern that I hope is shared across the political spectrum. We'll also be continuing to engage with the local MP. I spoke to her about it on Friday, and we will hope, as Councillor O'Brien has said, that she'll now be more helpful to the general message here in public that, you know, there aren't contradictory numbers. There's one number. It's been set by the government standard methodology and has been forced upon the District Council. And we need now to go through the process that the government has set and prove that there's no way that we could possibly deliver that number of housing and that number of houses, and it's in fact a ludicrous target that needs to be revised down significantly. So we'll be undertaking to do those things in the very near future, Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Thank you, Councillor Banks. So we next move to questions to the Leader of the Council. I have not received any questions from councillors for any verbal questions from councillors for the Leader of the Council. Item 17, ward issues, none have been received. So item 18, outside bodies, reporting back on meetings of outside bodies. Councillors have provided reports on outside bodies, which are set out on the agenda pages 67 to 76. With 2 further updates on the agenda supplement. Do any of those who have submitted reports wish to speak to their reports, please? Councillor Saunders, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just worth noting I did ask for more reports to come in on the last meeting, and it's good to see some reports, even if it is from like the one from Councillor Bird on the supplementary report, just to say that there haven't been any meetings, and that's fine, but it's useful to know. And as I say, I thank those councillors that have taken the time to put some reports in this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor MacLeod. Councillor MacLeod.
Sorry, I find it funny that this always gets raised, but there's never any outside bodies from the opposition party. So when's that going to start happening? I mean, we're happily doing it and we get pulled up on it, but there are a number of Conservative members on outside bodies and they do not provide reports.
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. I don't think there's an opportunity for anyone to respond to that. Hey, Councillor Linnington, yes, if you'd like to respond to Councillor MacLeod's question, please do.
Yes, just to say, I'm one of the guilty. I was intending to put a report in on the coastal SIG meeting. There wasn't a lot to report, but I was going to put something in, but I'm afraid I just got involved in so many stuff that I missed the deadline. So I will try and do it for next time, and there'll be a bit more to say then as well, hopefully. But as for anybody else, I think we only have one other, possibly 2 others on outside bodies. So I will ask those people maybe to do something for next time then. But as I say, there's very few of us who are on outside bodies. I think there may only be 2 of us, possibly 3.
Okay, maybe Democratic. Sorry, Councillor.
I'll just say I will try and get the reports in for next time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Linnington. Maybe Democratic Services could help confirm who the opposition members on outside bodies are. Councillor Davey.
Thank you very much, Chair. The reason I have not put in a report is because it would have been so negative and so disastrous that there was no point. So therefore, I've saved up for the moment when we have the good news. I am the Armed Forces champion. And representatives from the Armed Forces are pretty stunned, 68 representatives, as to why it's been such a slow, hopeless process of even getting our logo on the Lewes District Council emails and our website.
Yeah.
This is why I have not reported to any of you, because when I want to report, I want to say something positive. I am going to give thanks to an officer who has been extraordinarily helpful, and it's taken a long time. It didn't cost the council any money in time or money, but when I do report, I want to report something positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor David. I can also see hands from Councillor Papanikolaou and Councillor Berman. I don't think this was intended to be a personal explanation why people hadn't submitted reports. I think this agenda item was for people who had submitted reports to talk to them. So, Councillor Papanikolaou and Councillor Berman.
Yes, thank you,
something to
Chair.
say? Okay.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, sorry, I didn't submit a report. I sit on the outer body of 3VA, which I do join. I'm joining a Zoom in the morning. I do lots, hold workshops when I can from my premises. So I am quite involved with my outer body, but sorry, I didn't submit a report.
No, thank you, Councillor Papanikolaou. Councillor Berman, do you? I don't think people need to give personal explanations. I think it was just a request from Councillor MacLeod. But Councillor Berman, do you wish to say briefly what? Make a brief comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just to report that there is nothing to report. I'm the representative on the leader, and leader is not active any longer. It's got no funding anymore.
Okay. Noted. Thank you, Councillor Berman. Okay, so the outside body reports have been noted. Thank you. And we then move to item 19, the date of the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for the 27th of May 2021. Just to note that this date has had to be moved from the dates originally advertised due to a clash of meetings and also to potential room availability should we need a room for the next meeting, depending on what happens with the emergency legislation. Okay, and that is the end of the meeting. Thank you all for attending. I close the meeting at 21:09. Thank you very much. Good night.